Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I work in an oil refinery. I was doing inspections while other contractors were excavating about 100 feet away for a new sewer line. Anyone that's never been in a plant like that, it can be very loud. This area was loud enough I couldn't hear the backhoe-mounted jackhammer 100 feet away. All of a sudden, hear a loud crash, like someone dropped a couple tons from a crane several 100 feet in the air. I felt the earth shake. The plant alarm begins wailing. It's loud enough that I can faintly hear it at my house 13 miles away. Look over at other contractors. They look at me. We all nope out of there. Get to the evacuation area half-mile up the road. We use a multi-band shortwave radio system. Everyone is required to be within earshot of one. No one's radio is working. Whenever we hold the broadcast button, we get a beeping noise. Eventually, we're able to get through and started calling our guys to make sure they got out. No one else has left the plant. No one heard an alarm. Call main control and ask if the alarm has been triggered. That's a negative. We all talk about what to do. We all describe the exact same thing. About 15 of us. Walk back to the plant looking like assholes. Ask two guys that I get insider info from about it. They look at me like I was stupid. If the alarm went off, I'd know because I'm the one that pushes the button. I thought at first something catastrophic happened and they were covering it up. But out of 500 people on site, only a few of us evacuated. The rest of my crew was only a few hundred feet from me in the opposite direction and never budged. The guys I left with are burly union dudes, don't show gear, and don't believe in anything they can't see except God. If they didn't hear it, they wouldn't have left.
The city next to mine recently replaced its old storm drain sewer system. Last entrance to the old storm drain system hasn't been bricked off yet. Friends and I decide to explore said drainage system. One flashlight, two other guys have lights on their phones. We split up at a fork. Two guys go left. Me and two others go right. After a few minutes, we reach something that looks like a maintenance room. Old damaged control panels, ripped up swivel chair, clipped wires strewn about on the floor, etc. Has two metal doors, one on each end of the room. Door 1 is slightly open. Door 2 is sealed with a big padlock. Peek in door 1. Another room slightly larger with two large metal tables against walls, bunch of stuff on tables. Old shit from the 30s and 40s or something. Retro, I don't know. Both friends pile into the room. We begin looking through the stuff and talking loudly as we pocket stuff we want to keep. Hear a loud bang outside the room. We all go silent. Start laughing. Assume it's the other guys screwing with us. Very funny guys. Come check out what we found. Silence. Guys? Come on, it's not funny. No reply. Hear some heavy footsteps. Spooked. Peek out the door. Door 2's padlock is busted off and door is wide open. Smell of rot and something sour yet sweet hits my nose. Friends are all wide-eyed. Nope out of there. Never found out what it was. But our other friends we split up with said they felt uneasy without us. So we found them back at the entrance when we left. I still have some of the shit I stole from there too.
OP here. This happened when I was about 12. Be me. Around 2007 or 2008. In SoCal. A riverbed runs the entire length of the neighborhood. The school is located in the same neighborhood. Would use the riverbed as a shortcut to get to my block. Friends and I would walk it all the time. Would occasionally see animals. Rabbits and lizards mostly. We took a particular interest in this giant house-sized sewer grate tunnel that ran under the street of our neighborhoods. It would make noises sometimes. Sounded like a very deep, low breathing. You'd feel it in your ears and chest sometimes. Friends and I would go down there and throw rocks at the grate because the vibration made a really cool echo. Do this consistently for about 4 months almost every other day after school. Would occasionally hear movement coming from inside this giant tunnel. One time, a friend swore he had seen and heard something inside the tunnel. Said it was fleshy-colored and didn't have a face. Call bullshit. It's mostly pitch black, so you couldn't really see anything. Figured he was lying to sound cool. Time passes. One day we hear shuffling noises and what sounded like a choking cough coming from tunnel. Thought it could be a homeless person. Ignored it once that thought came up. Next day, friend and I are throwing rocks at the sewer grate. We hear something shuffle up closer to us from the darkness. Made some kind of noise. It sounded like a person. Sounded like shh, teach, shh. The teach sound we heard reminded me of how someone whose boom boxing imitates a high hat. Friend and I reel in horror. Tunnel got very cold. We were outside. This was during 95-degree weather in the spring. We run away and never go back to that part of the riverbed again. We were actually in tears. Would occasionally see black dog that started roaming that area after this incident. Never walk the riverbed again. Pick related. The grate was in front of this building. I lived on the next block over.
I have heard there was part of the French catacombs that are forsaken. The corridors to this place are supposedly narrow and the entire place hasn't even been mapped out. Also, they're easy to get lost in. I read about this somewhere, but I can't find the article.
I've been down there regularly for years. Not much /x/worthy. It's a huge network consisting of old stone quarries, part of it having been turned into catacombs that is closely interlinked with the sewer system, subway tunnels, various maintenance access for large and deep buildings, and even some wine caves. It's very dangerous to go there for many reasons. Getting lost isn't much of a problem as long as you don't go too deep. Plus, people will eventually find you, but then there are many deep pits with very slippery edges, things that could collapse, toxic fillings and consolidations. Oh, and people. Some go down there to get into fights and mug people. A special police unit goes down there, mostly to see if everything is okay, see what needs to be consolidated, see if people dug new entrances and fill them with some more toxic concrete. When there are parties, people usually gather and open up some sealed-down entrance just for the night, using some impressive cutting tools, because that's quite strong locks and doors they use to close accesses. As for the deeper parts, I've been to many. It took me some speleology training, and I went down there with 3 actual speleologists, fully equipped with adequate gear. All we found was endless tunnels of nothingness, some underwater rivers, some underground life, the usual. No skeletons anywhere, nor tags, so apparently no one ever went this deep since they were dug. As for the only creepy story I can tell, see next post. So I told this story so many times, I'm not even sure of the details, whether that was the real thing or if I simply added it to make the story better. But the rough thing is, I had arranged a place with friends with stuff we had found in the catacombs, like chairs, benches, a table, plus some stuff like candles, a deck of cards, a CD player and speakers, and we used to hang out down there. We also found a dummy, which we used as a coat hanger, with his arms spread. He was wearing a large torn coat and some weird-looking mask. That's how we had found him, and he was just standing there, creepily looking at us, smoking and drinking. But at some point, people found our hideout and trashed everything. We moved it several times, repaired the broken chairs, moved our dummy friend, and every time the same thing happened. At some point, we wanted to catch the fucks, as they always did this the same day. So we went there, put our coats on our dummy friend, drank some beers for like 2 hours, and then we split in groups of 2 and hid in the tunnels leading to the place, hiding in almost complete darkness, only with the faint light of a candle, waiting for them. After a long time of nothing having happened, my pal went to check on the others. About a minute later, I heard a scream, then footsteps, so I quickly lit my lantern and got up and saw someone running away, screaming and flailing his arms. I rushed to our hideout and found all my pals who had come too and thought I was the one screaming. All our stuff was wrecked as usual, which was especially surprising considering we hadn't heard anything and if the guy running away had done it. Well, no one saw him coming. And that's when we realized the dummy was gone. I still don't understand why nor even how someone managed to impersonate our dummy for a couple hours, just standing there, holding our coats, watching us. That's it. This is all you need to know about those catacombs, really.
The Nameless Thing of Berkeley Square. This unidentifiable monstrosity is said by some to be a vile, phantasmagorical killer from beyond the grave. though there is some evidence to suggest that it may be a bizarre mutant cephalopod, which lurks in the filthy labyrinth of the London sewer system, waiting to rise up and kill again. Considered by most paranormal experts to fit more accurately into the realm of haunting, the Nameless Thing of Berkeley Square has left behind tantalizing shreds of evidence, and unfortunately, more than one corpse, which suggests that the ghost, which inhabits the 4th floor, although some claim it's the 2nd, of number 50 Berkeley Square, in what has been referred to as the most haunted house in London, may not really be a case of spiritual infestation at all, but rather a semi-aquatic, predatory, cryptid phenomenon. Although no one is exactly sure when the first encounter with this beast occurred, the first known account of the Thing date as far back as the early 1840s, when 20-year-old Sir Robert Warboys came across strange rumors surrounding the notorious Berkeley Square address while imbibing at a tavern in London's Holborn district one evening. Evidently, Warboys was a man not prone to superstitious claptrap, as he derisively dismissed the legend as unadulterated poppycock. Warboys' barroom compatriots wholeheartedly disagreed with his assessment, and in what one can only assume was an effort to knock him down a peg or two, challenged the young noble to spend the night in the haunted 2nd-floor room. Warboys, with what was no doubt the heady rush of alcohol-fueled confidence, raised his pitcher of ale skyward and announced to his cohorts, "I wholeheartedly accept your preposterous harebrained challenge." Sir Robert then proceeded to the allegedly haunted dwelling, where he insisted the landlord allow him to spend the night in the ghost-filled quarters. After some debate, the landlord reluctantly agreed to Warboys' request, but only with the caveat that the young man be armed with a pistol, and that at the first sign of anything even remotely out of the ordinary, he would yank the cord that was attached to a bell in the landlord's room below. Warboys apparently scoffed at the notion, but agreed to the terms. As the clock chimed midnight, Warboys settled down at a table to await the Thing's arrival. The landlord, with what one must assume was a great lack of enthusiasm, left his temporary tenant alone in the dreaded room, save for his pistol and a single candle. But it wouldn't be long before the two would meet again. Less than an hour following the landlord's departure, at precisely 45 minutes past the hour, the proprietor was startled from an unfit slumber by the violent clanging of the bell adjacent to his bed. Before he even had time to clear his thoughts and react, a gunshot echoed from above his room. With a burst of adrenaline, the landlord leapt from his bed and climbed the stairs at a rapid pace. When he arrived at the door to the notorious room, he pushed it open to reveal a sight which he would never forget. The room was apparently unchanged except for the notable fact that Sir Robert had left his perch at the table and was now wedged in the corner of the room, the still smoking pistol caught in his white-knuckled grip of his fear-contorted corpse. In the very short time the landlord spent in the room, he noted that Warboys, his lips were peeled back from his clenched teeth in a grimace of horror, and eyes seemed to be literally bulging from his skull. The landlord followed Sir Robert's gaze to a lone bullet hole in the opposite wall and speculated that Warboys had fired at the infamous Thing. But for reasons he could not surmise, the bullet had had no effect on the beast. There can be no doubt that 50 Berkeley Square can boast a horrific array of ostensibly paranormal encounters, ranging from strange sounds reported by neighbors to the confirmed deaths of guests and domestic servants. But there is one confrontation which has become the benchmark of this legend. Just 3 years following the horrific death of Sir Robert Warboys, 50 Berkeley Square became the site of yet another gruesome demise. Although the details of this narrative have varied in minor degrees from one retelling to another, the core of the account has always remained the same. In 1943, 2 sailors from Portsmouth, Robert Martin and Edward Blunden, after having squandered their lodging funds on an evening of drunken ribaldry, noticed a "to let" on the then-abandoned Berkeley Square abode and managed to break into a basement window of the dwelling in search of a night's rest. Discovering that the lower level of the house was uncomfortably damp, not to mention rat-infested, the sailors migrated upwards, finally settling down in the now notorious room. Blunden, presumably the more sober of the two, expressed the anxiety he felt upon entering the room. He claimed that he felt a presence, but these fears were promptly dismissed by his shipmate, who used his rifle to prop open a window to allow for a breeze and built a fire in the long, unused hearth, with bits of broken furniture and rotting floorboards. It wasn't long before the two men were huddled on the relative warmth of the floor, fast asleep. Sometime after midnight, Blunden awoke to see the door to the room creaking open. Little by little, a sliver of dim, grayish light crept across the wooden floor. Too terrified to move, Blunden managed to wake his accomplice. The two men sat up as they heard a strange, moist, scraping sound slowly approach them. Later, Martin claimed that it sounded as if something were dragging itself across the floor. Suddenly, the terrified men leapt to their feet and came face to face with the abhorrent visage of what could only describe as a hideous monstrosity. The creature undulated between the sailors and what was their only hope for escape, the open door. Then, just as the trembling Blunden began to reach toward the rifle, which was still wedged in the window frame, the creature suddenly lunged forward, wrapping itself around the young sailor's throat. Seizing the opportunity, the panic-stricken Martin ran from the house, screaming for help. Soon enough, he stumbled upon a patrolling police officer. Although skeptical of the young sailor's frenzied tale, and no doubt attributing it to the almost overwhelming stench of alcohol which permeated his uniform, the officer dutifully followed Martin back to Berkeley Square. According to the account, Martin and the officer ran up the stairs but found no sign of Blunden in the room. Martin reclaimed his rifle as the two men continued to search the house. Their efforts seemed to prove fruitless, however, until the men entered the basement and were greeted to a ghastly image that would haunt them for the remainder of their lives. Lying at the base of the stairs in Berkeley Square's moist, rock-walled cellar was Blunden's dismembered corpse. His body lay in a mangled heap, with his head wrenched viciously to the side. The officer reported that the young man's eyes, much like those of Sir Robert Warboys, were wide with unimaginable horror. This appalling tale, like so many legends of this ilk, has also been recounted with a decidedly more phantasmal twist. The most notable variation in this retelling is the description of the Thing as a shadowy man-like figure with a deformed face and body that burst in on the sailors and proceeded to strangle Blunden with cold, misty-looking hands. Yet another discrepancy has Blunden perishing not in the basement, but being hurled from the window and impaled on a spike on the wrought iron fence that surrounded Berkeley Square. It's these incongruities that have led many investigators to file this case under the paranormal banner, assuming that it is just another ghost story. But there is intriguing, though admittedly scant, evidence to suggest that this may be a genuine, albeit exceedingly bizarre, corporeal entity. While these shocking encounters leave more questions as to the Thing's identity than answers, there are other alleged eyewitness accounts which can help us to paint a more complete picture of this creature. Some have described as an amorphous being, formless and slimy, which emits a gruesome, sloppy noise when it moves, while others insist it is a dark, shapeless, spectral form, which was described as a collection of shadows that attacks its victims with clawed feet and razor-sharp, bird-like talons. Though accounts conflict regarding the actual shape and size of the beast, at least one eyewitness has included tentacles in his description of the creature, likening the fiend to a small, viciously deformed octopus, which pulls itself across the floor, leaving a viscous trail in its wake. This description has led some researchers to speculate that the Thing may actually be some kind of mutated freshwater octopi, or an unknown amphibious marine animal that managed to migrate from the Thames into London's vast subterranean sewer system, where it was able to infiltrate the Berkeley Square home via the plumbing. It can also be speculated that this beast was looking to feed on the ample rat population that dwelt in the house when it accidentally stumbled across the more substantial prey of the drunken sailors. In the 1920s, eminent psychic investigator Harry Price revealed a plethora of data regarding earlier encounters with the Thing. While poring over scads of newspaper articles, he came across a story from 1790 that claimed 50 Berkeley Square once housed the headquarters for a crew of counterfeiters. Price speculated, rather dubiously, that the counterfeiters, in a plot lifted right from Scooby-Doo, had concocted the spooky tale to frighten off curious onlookers and provide a spectral cover for the noisy processes that accompanied their illicit nocturnal activities. Price also managed to turn up another 1840 account of bizarre noises, including bells, loud footsteps, and heavy dragging sounds, emanating from the house that were so rambunctious a cadre of courageous neighbors felt obliged to search the abode, to no avail. He also came across an 1870 article published in the magazine Notes and Queries by W.E. Howlett, which stated, "The mystery of Berkeley Square still remains a mystery. The story of the haunted house in Mayfair can be recapitulated in a few words. The house contains at least one room of which the atmosphere is supernaturally fatal to body and mind. A girl saw, heard, and felt such horror in it that she went mad and never recovered sanity enough to tell how or why. A gentleman, a disbeliever in ghosts, dared to sleep in number 50 and was found a corpse in the middle of the floor after frantically ringing for help in vain. Rumor suggests other cases of the same kind, all ending in death, madness, or both as a result of sleeping or trying to sleep in that room. The very party walls of the house, when touched, are found saturated with electric horror. It is uninhabited save by an elderly man and his wife who act as caretakers. But even these have no access to the room. This is kept locked, the key being in the hands of a mysterious and seemingly nameless person who comes to the house once every 6 months, locks up the elderly couple in the basement, and then unlocks the room and occupies himself in it for hours." Price also noted that while 50 Berkeley Square was located on a piece of real estate wedged in one of London's most enviable districts, it had remained vacant for inexplicably long stretches of time. His personal conclusion of the whole affair was that a particularly nasty poltergeist had been active at number 50 in the 1840s, but doubted that the thing was still at large. Since 1853, the ground floor of the house on Berkeley Square has played host to an antique bookshop known as Maggs Brothers. Although there have been no reported sightings of the creature in the 20th century, it has been noted that employees of the bookshop are not allowed to go up to the top floor. They say a police notice hangs on the wall inside the house that was put up in the 1950s. It states that the top floor of the house is not to be used, even for storage. No one is exactly sure why. Although in a case like this it is difficult to separate truth from legend, one likely reason that there have been no recent encounters with this beast is the fact that, if this creature indeed has oceanic roots, it has, in all likelihood, returned to the fathomless depths of the sea, or, more chillingly, it and its offspring may still be lurking in the labyrinth of centuries-old tunnels, which weave their way beneath Great Britain's capital city, feeding on rats, waiting to crawl back up from the sewer to claim more human victims. A few notes of interest to point out: the shortest-serving Prime Minister of England, George Canning, resided in the house and supposedly had experienced some strange happenings. His term was cut short due to his health failing at the age of 57, for reasons unknown. Also, despite the fact that the Necronomicon isn't a real book, 50 Berkeley Square is now home to a shop that specializes in antique books. Lastly, BP, the oil company, had bought the property, not certain as to why an oil company would be interested in such property, except perhaps to dig around in the basement, maybe to see what was living down under the house in the sewers. Perhaps they were being contracted by an outside source for use of their drilling equipment.
Live in Honduras, med school, public health rotation. Honduras is a third world country. Me and my partner go from house to house checking water deposits not being infected with mosquito larvae. We go to the worst part of the downtown area. The whole block makes approximately 10 houses, the majority in good conditions, except 2 wooden ones. Here it gets kind of weirder. The entire street from the block is not pavement, it is just a dirty road full of rocks. Many cockroaches on the street. There is no garbage on roads. Not kidding, an exaggerating amount of cockroaches of all sizes and colors. We go to dump one. It's full of cockroaches. Even children react normally. The partner is terrified and hates cockroaches. We ask other neighbors how they deal with cockroaches. They tell us they spend a lot on exterminators and even buy geckos and release them in their backyards. The main problem is the 2 dumps from the block. They are poor families, but that's no excuse according to many. In dump 1, a kid is eating its lunch. 3 cockroaches are near his lunch. He normally pushes them from the table. Vomit nope.jpg. Finally, we check everything we leave dump 1. Arrive at dump 2 reminds me why we are a third world country. It's a cantina, the old dude sells alcohol, but amazingly sanitary conditions are from a sewer dump. Enter to check water deposits. Shit got real. Watch a large number of cockroaches. I'm not afraid of cockroaches, but it seems like an anthole. Nope, out of there. Leave them some pamphlets and a bait. A chemical for killing larvae in water deposits. Old dude is mad and drunk yells at us. We leave. Next and last house, clean house. We are exhausted, walking hours, and the temp is hot. Partner is terrified with the amount of cockroaches. Mentions it to the owner of the last house. He tells us that supposedly that cockroaches come from underground. There is no sewer system underground. Just old caves and tunnels like in the majority of Honduras. Man tells us probably there is something underground, like a giant hive of cockroaches. Spend the entire day thinking about the cockroaches. A whole colony of cockroaches underground. Probably from the prehistoric era, among the colony. The queen planning its resurgence, the main queen waiting for human extinction to feed on our carcass. Waiting while sending cockroaches.
I am 100% convinced there are monsters or demons in the tunnels of old New York. People go missing, you see crazy shit, you hear things you can't explain. There are thousands of miles of tunnels under New York City. Some are as old as the early 1800s, old subway systems access tunnels for sewer and electricity. It's a literal labyrinth down there. One time I saw a creature about 4 feet tall, 1.2 meters, that was all black with shining bright yellow eyes. We were under an abandoned subway station and I was camping with these homeless old people before moving down into Pennsylvania. One of the dudes went off to take a shit or something and he didn't come back for almost 40 minutes, so his friend and I went to look for him. We found him hiding inside a crate holding onto a pipe. He was flipping the fuck out. These guys are mostly drunks, and occasionally they do heroin but not any hallucinogens. So we know he wasn't tripping balls. He told us there was a demon at the end of the tunnel hiding in the corner, so we went down there to check. When I shined my light down in the tunnel, maybe 100 feet or so, something small and black took off running and into a maintenance opening with pipes and wires and shit. Small enough for a cat or dog to maybe get through, not a person. It was all black and ran upright, small like a toddler with bright yellow eyes. I couldn't see any clothing or hair or ears. Could have been a ghost, I guess, but I'm convinced it was a monster or a mutant or some shit.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.